Hello history buffs, and welcome back to our channel. Today we're journeying back to the dawn of the First World War, to a landscape of tangled forests, vast swamps, and over 2,000 lakes. This is East Prussia, the setting for one of the most decisive, yet often overlooked, series of battles on the Eastern Front, the First and Second Battles of the Masurian Lakes. While the world's attention was fixed on the bloody stalemate of the Western Front, Germany and Russia were locked in a titanic struggle of manoeuvre and annihilation. This is the story of how the German Eighth Army, led by the legendary duo of Hindenburg and Ludendorff, twice faced down the seemingly unstoppable Russian steamroller and emerged victorious, reshaping the course of the war in the East. Let's set the stage. It's August 1914. Germany has launched the Schlieffen Plan, throwing the bulk of its forces west to knock France out of the war quickly. This left its eastern frontier, East Prussia, dangerously exposed. To relieve pressure on their French allies, the Russian Empire mobilized far faster than Germany had anticipated, launching a two-pronged invasion. General Rennenkampf's First Army advanced from the east, while General Samsonov's Second Army pushed up from the south. Their goal: to encircle and destroy the outnumbered German Eighth Army. The initial German commander, Prittwitz, panicked after a minor defeat and suggested a full retreat. This was unacceptable to the German High Command. They sacked Prittwitz and sent for a retired general, Paul von Hindenburg, pairing him with the brilliant but abrasive strategist, Erich Ludendorff. This new command team inherited a desperate situation, but also a daring plan formulated by a staff officer named Max Hoffmann. The plan was audacious. It relied on a crucial piece of intelligence: the personal animosity between the two Russian generals, Rennenkampf and Samsonov, which meant they were unlikely to coordinate or support each other effectively. It also exploited the fact that the Russians were transmitting their orders in the clear, unencrypted. The Germans knew exactly where they were going. Hoffmann's strategy was to use a thin screen of cavalry to delay Rennenkampf's massive First Army in the north, while concentrating the bulk of the Eighth Army to encircle and annihilate Samsonov's Second Army to the south. It was an all-or-nothing gamble. If Rennenkampf decided to advance aggressively, the German forces would be crushed between the two Russian armies. But the gamble paid off spectacularly at the Battle of Tannenberg in late August. Samsonov's army was completely destroyed, a catastrophic defeat for Russia. With Samsonov's army gone, Hindenburg and Ludendorff immediately turned their attention to Rennenkampf's First Army, which had been slowly advancing into East Prussia. This sets the scene for the First Battle of the Masurian Lakes, which began on September 7th, 1914. Using Germany's superior rail network, the Eighth Army was rapidly redeployed north. The plan was a mirror image of Tannenberg: pin the Russian center and right flank while launching a powerful enveloping attack on their left or southern flank. The German Masurian Corps and 16th Corps slammed into the Russian left, threatening to cut off Rennenkampf's entire army. The terrain, a maze of lakes and dense woods, which had hindered the Russian advance, now became a deadly trap. Rennenkampf, realizing the danger of encirclement, had no choice but to order a hasty retreat. The withdrawal was chaotic. Russian units became disorganized, suffering heavy casualties from German artillery and flanking attacks. By September 14th, the battle was over. The Russian First Army had been battered and thrown completely out of East Prussia. The results were stunning. In just a few weeks, the German Eighth Army had not only saved East Prussia, but had also inflicted two monumental defeats on the Russian Empire. They had captured over 150,000 prisoners and vast quantities of equipment, all while being significantly outnumbered. Hindenburg and Ludendorff were hailed as national heroes in Germany. The victories had an immense psychological impact, creating a myth of German military superiority on the Eastern Front. For Russia, the defeats were a devastating blow to morale and exposed deep-seated problems within its military command, from poor leadership and communication to logistical nightmares. However, the invasion had achieved its strategic goal. It forced Germany to divert two army corps from the Western Front at a critical moment, in troops that were desperately needed at the First Battle of the Marne, arguably contributing to the failure of the Schlieffen Plan and ensuring a long, drawn-out war. The Eastern Front was far from decided. As the brutal winter of 1914-1915 set in, the front stabilized. But the German High Command wasn't content to sit still. Ludendorff, ever the aggressor, saw an opportunity for another decisive blow. He planned a massive winter offensive, aiming to encircle the Russian 10th Army, which was positioned in the Augusto Forest, east of the Masurian Lakes. This would become known as the Second Battle of the Masurian Lakes, or the Winter Battle of Masuria. The German plan involved a vast pincer movement. In the north, the newly formed 10th Army would strike south, while in the south, Hindenburg's 8th Army would push northeast. The attack was launched on February 7, 1915, in the midst of a furious blizzard and bone-chilling temperatures. The surprise was total. The Germans, better equipped for winter warfare, advanced rapidly through the snow, catching the Russian forces completely off guard. The Russian 10th Army's commander, General Sievers, was slow to react to the developing catastrophe. The northern pincer of the German attack sliced through his lines, while the southern pincer closed in. Soon, a large portion of the Russian army, primarily the XX Corps under General Bulgakov, was completely surrounded in the Augusto Forest. For 3 weeks, these trapped soldiers fought on with incredible bravery in appalling conditions, freezing and starving, but refusing to surrender. Their desperate stand, however, allowed the rest of the Russian 10th Army to escape the German trap and establish a new defensive line. By February 21st, the surrounded XX Corps was finally forced to surrender. The Second Battle of the Masurian Lakes was another major German tactical victory. They had inflicted around 200,000 casualties on the Russians and taken another huge haul of prisoners. Despite the scale of the victory, the Second Battle of the Masurian Lakes failed to be the decisive blow Ludendorff had hoped for. It didn't knock Russia out of the war. The Russian army, despite its staggering losses, was able to draw on its immense reserves of manpower to rebuild its shattered armies. The battle demonstrated a recurring theme of the Eastern Front. Germany could win spectacular tactical victories, inflicting enormous casualties, but it struggled to achieve a decisive strategic outcome. Russia could trade space for time, absorbing horrific losses that would have crippled any other European power. The sheer size of the country and its army meant that even after defeats like Tannenberg and Masuria, it could always reform and fight another day. These battles chewed up German resources and manpower that were also needed on the Western Front. So, what is the legacy of the Masurian Lakes battles? Firstly, they cemented the legendary status of the Hindenburg-Ludendorff partnership. Their fame would propel them to the supreme command of the entire German war effort by 1916. Secondly, the battles highlighted the critical importance of modern logistics, communication, and leadership. Germany's ISUs of railways and radio intercepts gave them a decisive edge over the poorly coordinated and supplied Russian armies. Thirdly, these German victories had a profound and lasting impact on the course of the war in the East. They prevented a Russian conquest of East Prussia and inflicted losses from which the Tsarist army never fully recovered, contributing to the growing discontent that would eventually explode into the Russian Revolution of 1917. While the Western Front devolved into the static horror of trench warfare, the East remained a war of movement, of grand envelopments and brutal winter campaigns, all shaped by the echoes of the German triumphs at the Masurian Lakes. These battles are a stark reminder that World War I was truly a global conflict, fought on multiple fronts with differing characteristics. The sweeping campaigns across the vast plains and forests of the East were just as brutal and consequential as the fighting in the trenches of France and Belgium. The story of the Masurian Lakes is one of strategic genius, fatal flaws, incredible bravery, and immense suffering, a critical chapter in the epic tragedy of the Great War. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the Eastern Front. If you found this history fascinating, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more explorations of forgotten battles and pivotal moments in history. Let us know in the comments what other topics you'd like us to cover. Until next time, stay curious.